I want to be crystal clear about something before we begin. This video is not about politics. This video is about business performance and what the data is actually showing organizational leaders right now about decisions that many companies are making and what that decision is actually costing them. Now, here's the data. A human rights campaign report published in 2026 found that 54.2% of workers in organizations that scale back diversity and inclusion initiatives reported experiencing stigma or bias in the past year. That's more than double the 24.9% rate reported at organizations that maintain inclusion practices. And the same report that found employers leading with transparent, inclusive practices are seeing an average net income of more than 8 times higher than their peers. Let's sit with that for just a moment. 8 times higher. Hi, I'm Angelia Malbrew, Fortune 500 veteran, organizational development consultant, keynote platinum award winning speaker, and someone who has spent 14 and a half years inside environments that this data is actually describing. And today we're going to talk about what the DEI rollback is, what it's actually costing your organization in numbers, and the numbers and the data that the board of directors cannot ignore. Here's what's actually happening. The landscape right now is not a level playing field. There is a 65% drop in the numbers of Fortune 500 companies publicly documenting their diversity and inclusion practices in 2026 compared to the previous year, 65%. Companies like Amazon, Google, Goldman Sachs, Meta, Walmart, and others have scaled back or reframed programs that were previously public facing commitments to their workforce. And some of them are using language like belonging or our culture building instead. Others have quietly eliminated programs, positioning, training opportunities, and resource groups. And here's what I need organizational leaders to understand. The employees who benefited from those programs and the employees who watched those programs disappear, are they still in your building? Watching, drawing conclusions, and making decisions about how long they're going to stay with your company? I'll answer that question for them. The answer is absolutely yes. If they are there, they are making decisions. If they are there, they are planning their way out. Because no one wants to go anywhere, and that includes your company, and feel like they're unwanted. Let's talk about what the data says about the cost. Let me give you the business case because this is a business conversation. McKinsey research said that this has been a consistent across multiple years of analysis. They found that companies in the top quartile for ethnic and racial diversity are 15% more likely to have financial returns above their industry mean. You can't argue with the data because the data doesn't lie. Research from Boston Consulting Group found that companies with above average diversity in leadership see innovation revenue of 19% higher than those with less diverse teams. And inclusion workplaces, they experience 50% lower attrition rates. 50% lower. In a year when the Achievers Workforce Institute is projecting attrition could cost U.S. employers between 1.3 and 5.1 trillion dollars. Trillion with a T. A 50% reduction in attrition is not a culture statement. It's a financial strategy. And here is the data that the humans underneath those numbers are not really talking about and saying out loud. 54.2% of workers at organizations that scale back inclusion practices reported experiencing bias or stigma, and more than double the rate at the organizations who maintain those practices. Bias and stigma are not just uncomfortable, they are expensive. They showed up as decreased engagement, decreased collaboration, decreased innovation, and ultimately decreased retention of the exact people who were keeping your organization going behind the scenes and those you should have been fighting to keep. Here's what I saw inside Fortune 500 organizations. I spent 14 and a half years in those rooms, and I watched something behind the scenes, and I watched things repeat over and over and over. And now that data that I already mentally took a note of is confirming everything I was thinking. When an organization signals through its decisions, its policies, its silence, or its messaging that certain voices, faces, and walks of life and creeds are valued less than others, those voices don't just go quiet, they go somewhere else. And the organization that dismissed them, they're left wondering, why are our best people constantly walking out the door? Running engagement surveys that could never capture what actually happened. Because I was one of those people filling out those surveys. And they never truly wanted to hear what we thought of the workplace. They only cared about the bottom line. Increasing salaries to try to compensate for culture problems that money cannot fix. You could dump all the money on it you want it, but at the end of the day, if it's a culture problem, you can make people walking millionaires overnight and it won't fix it. The invisible talent drain I talk about in my work is not theoretical. It is exactly what the data is describing. The talent was never missing. The environment stopped being worthy of them trying to stay for it. Here are 3 questions that every organizational leader should be asking right now. First, regardless of what your organization has or has not changed externally, what is the actual lived experience of every person in your organization right now? Not what your policy says. What do your people feel? Second, when did you last have a real, honest, structured conversation with your leadership team about psychological safety? Not a training, not a conversation, with real answers. And third, what is your organization's plan for retaining the talent that is watching all of this unfold and making decisions behind the scenes? Because this is not just a role for them, this is not just a job for them. This is people's livelihoods. Because 34% of employees are already planning and looking for new jobs. And I can guarantee you they have the resignation letter typed up on their computers. This is not for 2027, this is for 2026. And the most mobile employees, the ones with options, oh, they're looking the hardest. Your best people, they're already looking and they're 1 foot out the door. The free leadership risk assessment is available at angeliamalbrew.com. It is designed to help you answer the hard questions first, honestly, and without judgment. 5 minutes, no agenda, just clarity. Now, I'll say this, I've said this throughout my entire career. The data does not lie. Inclusive organizations outperform. They retain better, they innovate more, and they're the kind that build the trust in the employees that make them want to stay. The people with the best talent. Not because they have to, but because the environment that you build is worth staying for. I want to give a shout out to a few of the companies that refuse to back down on making place and space for people that others consider the minority. JP Morgan Chase. I actually worked for JP Morgan Chase for nearly a decade. Delta. Delta is my airline of choice. Costco. Costco is my shopping experience of choice. And I name those 3 because anytime I do business with any of them, they make me feel valued to be a customer, not just a number. So I know what it feels like to be valued for what you bring to the table. And I also know what it feels like to be dismissed because of the color of your skin. If you found this video valuable, share it with one CPO or organizational leader in your network today. Subscribe for new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you're willing, go ahead and join me on March the 20th in Phoenix, Arizona for the Executive Presence Workshop. We will have conversation, no bias, no judgment, just clarity. The link will be in the description. I am Angelia Malbrew. I am here to show you, train you, and equip you to lead like a brand. And I'll see you next time.